3,870 disputes opened last year, 90% of those closed. Those sound like pretty good results.
Yes, we are very pleased with our results. We feel that I think consumers know a little bit more about their rights. That's one of the reasons for the increase in disputes. And also they know about the office, that it is a place where they can come and we'll resolve it free of charge. So I think that is, partly the reason. I don't think there are more problems in the market than there were before.
Well, we hope not.
We hope not. Maybe even less because of the National Credit Act. But I think that consumers know about their rights and they know, few more know where to complain.
Your mandate was extended last year, so the jurisdiction now also includes non-bank credits and debt counselling disputes as well. Do you think that probably added to the caseload as well?
Yes, last year we expanded the mandate to include non-bank credit. That's now all the retailers, the clothing, the furniture, micro-lending, the non-bank motor finance. So that led to an increase. And the debt counselling, that's only from January this year. And I mean, that was only really launched last night. So I think next year, this time, we'll see a huge increase in number of complaints. And that's what we're hoping for, because there are problems out there, there are consumers with issues, and they don't have the money for litigation.
What sort of issues are we talking about? What typically is a case that comes to the Credit Ombud?
At the moment, or in 2010, we had the two departments. We had credit information, the typical blacklisting. I've applied for credit and I'm blacklisted. So what now? Or I've been to the credit bureaus and there's something wrong on my report. There's a judgment that I've paid and it's not removed. Or, I've paid my debt and it shows that I'm not paying it. So those are the typical credit bureau issues that we deal with. On the credit side, we found a lot of account issues. People say that the accounts are incorrect, that they don't get the accounts, that they query items, they don't get any resolution. And then we also have the typical garnishee orders. A lot of people they've defaulted in the past for whatever reason. Then judgment was taken, the money goes off their salaries. And years later, they still sit with a debt that is 2 or 3 times the amount of the original debt, and they actually start querying and they say, well, why? What is going on here? Please check it for me, because they do not know how to check those accounts. So those are sort of, most of the disputes that we get. Then we have interesting cases of, people saying that, I should never have had the credit. It was recklessly given. So
does that also fall under your jurisdiction in that case?
Yes, yeah. If somebody says that, we often have a family member. We had, for example, a son saying that his mother, a pensioner, got credit for a substantial amount and she should never have been given that credit. So we investigated those kind of cases.
Of course, there are very strict guidelines under the National Credit Act, particularly on credit bureaus, on the extension of credit to people who can't afford it. So does that make your job easier?
Yes, of course, now that there's a National Credit Act, there are very strict rules of what the credit bureaus can keep, how long they can keep it, what they must remove, and the process. So, we work within defined parameters, and, everybody knows exactly what should be there. But despite that, the credit bureaus do have millions of records, and, there's still problems. So that is why, you have a consumer who says that, my credit information is not correct. And I've tried to query it and I'm not getting anywhere, so please help. That's where we come in. But we do use the National Credit Act as the basis, because that says exactly what they're allowed to keep and for how long.
Well, of all those cases that passed across your desks, how many were you able to resolve amicably through your intervention without having to make a judgment against either the consumer or the company?
Well, we're very lucky that in 2010 we didn't make any rulings. Now, a ruling is where the Credit Ombud tells the credit provider, you shall do X, Y, Z. All of the cases we managed to resolve through negotiation, by listening to both parties and then negotiating a settlement, where we did not have to tell somebody that they have to do something. So we didn't make any rulings in 2010, and that's a good sign, because that means that the people are cooperating.
You also say in the annual report that 700,000 rand put back in the pockets of consumers, and that's always good news, isn't it? Particularly in tough times like these.
Yeah, and what's important is that those are it was made up not out of big amounts. It's 2,000 when we recalculate an account for consumer, especially on the credit side. because that's on the credit side where we put back 700,000. It's 4,000, you know, overcharging here, 3,000 to 2,000, where we negotiated after recalculating an account. So, you know, and you know, of course, for a consumer, some of them were so happy that out of the blue, after you know, us looking at the account, they got 10,000 back. You know, it was, you know, it was very good news for a lot of consumers.
Reana, a pretty scary statistic, and it also comes out in the report. Data from the National Credit Regulator shows that of the 18.5 credit active consumers in South Africa, 46.5% have impaired credit records, so 3 or more payments in arrears or a judgment or administration order against them. Does that sound exceptionally high to you? Is it because of the tough period we have come through, do you think?
Yes, I mean, definitely because of the economic circumstances. And then also, you know, just before the economic crisis hit us, you know, there was a push in credit. So a lot of people...
And just before the National Credit Act.
And before the National Credit Act especially. So, you know, and all of that, you know, together with then the economic situation and a lot of job losses, I mean, that I think created the situation where we're sitting with, you know, more people than we should with impaired records, and those people will not be able to get credit. And you know, a lot of people do need it for their day-to-day lives to purchase household goods or motor vehicles. They do not have the cash. So unfortunately, if they sit with an impaired record like that, they actually can't enter the credit market, and they can't continue until they've fixed it or the periods have lapsed for that information to show.